Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be another chatty get ready with me. I'm taking inspiration for this video from another YouTuber. Her name is Miriam A, that is her channel name. I really respect her content. She seems really smart. She's also a scientist and she does very thoughtful reviews and she doesn't buy a lot of stuff. So when she does buy something, she puts a lot of effort into it. But I think a couple months ago, I think it was at the end of 2022, she did a video that was some lessons she's learned in makeup over the years from, the decade or so that she's been buying and using makeup. And I thought it was a really great idea and I asked if I could take inspiration and do a version of that myself. And she was like, of course, totally do that. Make sure you tag me so I can watch it. But I haven't had time in my schedule to do it. So finally sitting down to do that now. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Colin. I am a non-binary Latinx scientist and lover of makeup. I especially like indie makeup and high-end makeup, and I tend to take a pretty analytical approach to my makeup reviews and my makeup collection as a whole. And I have new content every week, so I'd love to have you subscribe. Okay, so like I said in the intro, this was inspired by a video or a couple videos that Miriam did. Really like her channel. I really like her videos. She is based in Europe. I think she's in the Netherlands, and she does a lot of Pat McGrath content, which I really appreciate. And her videos on the Lisa Eldridge palettes were really well done and really liked those. So I will link her channel and those videos below and in the cards. So I'm going to just get ready and talk about lessons I've learned in it's 2023 now, so 3.5 years or so that I've been using makeup and buying makeup and consuming more makeup content. Because I was inspired by Miriam, I'm going to use Pat McGrath today. So I'm going to use Subliminal, one of my favorite palettes. Haven't used this in a little while and it feels appropriate for the weather today. It's like kind of gloomy, but not quite. So I'm going to use this. I grabbed my Pat blushes and highlighter as well. And I grabbed my Pat foundation. So I'm going to do a lot of Pat McGrath stuff, although I'm not going to really talk about the makeup. So before I started, if you haven't seen it, this is Subliminal. This is the Cool Tone palette. Really, really love this palette. And I'm not sure what I want to do. I used this a lot last winter, especially like these everyday shades for teaching in, but I think I'm going to use some of the more special shades today, which is why I haven't done any other makeup but lip oil and brow gel, because I don't want to get fallout or anything. Okay, so I put some eye primer down, just my standard Urban Decay, and I'm going to be using my bronzer mirror as my mirror today just because the mirrors in this are very nice, but it's kind of heavy to hold this whole palette up. So I do have a short list here. It's not crazy long, but I'm sure there's other things that I will think of as I talk or will think of later. So if you want a part 2 or anything, let me know. I'd also think it'd be really interesting if you also have a YouTube channel. This would be a video I think other people should do. I think this is a nice topic to talk about. Also, I do want to preface that they are doing construction outside again, but instead of directly below our building and our windows, they're like down the street a little. So you might hear a little bit of like da-da-da-da-da noise, but it's not been too bad for the last couple hours while I was doing other work. So hopefully it's fine as background noise if it does happen. And like I said in the intro, I've been playing with and buying makeup since the end of 2019. 2020 was like the real, like everything locked down. I was like, well, I have more free time and I'm stuck at home. I might as well like deep dive into this. So I have not been using makeup as long as she has, but I have definitely learned things about myself and about makeup and the makeup industry in those 3 years. So the first thing is more about myself, and these are mostly about myself, but the first thing I've learned is that I don't like drugstore makeup. So I started with drugstore, and I think most people should start with drugstore because it's cheaper if you get something, if you're like playing around with different colors and formulas and stuff, it's easier to play around and figure out what you like product-wise and color-wise with drugstore makeup without spending a ton of money. Like buying a cheaper eyeliner, like a liquid eyeliner to practice your wing liner is gonna be better than buying the most expensive one you can. It might perform better, and that is something to take into account, but like you don't wanna plow through a really expensive product while you're learning. Same with eyeshadow. I started learning a lot with like ColourPop and stuff, and I don't buy ColourPop anymore, but I really appreciated ColourPop for that ability to like, I could buy a fairly inexpensive palette, like under $20, although they're getting more expensive now, and could play around and figure out techniques, styles, colors. Do I like blue on me? Do I like pink on me? Do I like green? You know, like figuring that stuff out. Do I like glittery shadows or just regular metallics? That kind of stuff. Learning that in drugstore is, I think, a really great thing. So I recommend drugstore products a lot, especially for beginners. But I personally don't like using drugstore products anymore, and I don't really buy most of them. I see people oftentimes recommend and like, oh, have you tried this? Like I have friends who are like, have you tried this e.l.f. product? And I don't buy e.l.f. makeup at all anymore. I've heard good things about their brushes, but I have had zero luck with any e.l.f. product I've tried. I've had them either like not work, like the liquid eyeshadows were awful. I had a lipstick that just felt bad on my lips. The primers that I've used either made my skin feel gross. I've tried 3 of them, I think, and they made my skin feel gross and greasy. Even the matte one made like the putty primer especially, made my face feel like I just put bacon grease on it, and it never faded. So it made wearing makeup unpleasant. But then also, I've had some bad allergic reactions to some of their products. Some of them, like the lip gloss has avocado oil in it, and I didn't look at that beforehand. I now look at every product for that. But I've also had like one of the face primers I used and one other product where like they made my face like red and irritated, and my skin did not like them. So I just don't buy a lot of drugstore products. I feel like, yes, sometimes I think it's an important market to have because not everybody can afford higher end or luxury makeup. And even if you can, you might not want to spend the money on it. But I also don't particularly enjoy using the products. I feel like they might often be like, they might have a dupe for something, but when you look at the ingredients list, they're using often lesser, cheaper ingredients. And I don't know, it's just like, it's not, the experience of using drugstore makeup isn't as nice. Like ColourPop, I still have a couple palettes, but I don't really use them because I might like the look that I get at the end, but the effort it takes to get there is less enjoyable, so I'm not gonna grab it. So that is something I've learned about myself, that like the experience of using the makeup matters a lot, and if I don't like using the makeup, I'm not going to use it, so then don't buy it, because then it's just a waste of time and money. Okay, and the second part of that, the second point I have, which is the second like half to that, is consistency matters. So I think product consistency, how it works, and then consistency from a brand, having brands release products on a regular basis that are good quality and not hit or misses, is really important to me. I know there are apparently some really good like Makeup Revolution products and, you know, NYX products and stuff. But I find with a lot, especially drugstore, I mean, there are some higher end brands that are not known for consistency, and I avoid those. But I feel like part of the price tag that you're paying with like mid-tier and high-end makeup is the consistency of it. That it's, you're generally, if you buy it, you know it's gonna work well. And I feel like you don't get that in drugstore makeup. And there's some loud noises outside. And there's so much, I don't have the time or money to buy 20 products hoping that one of them will work well for me. It's just not something like something I want in my life. So it's not something I do. And I think brands like Makeup Revolution should focus more on consistency and less on releasing as many things. So you see them release launch after launch after launch, and it's like, or do half as many launches and make sure that they're like well thought out, well curated, and like good. That's my personal opinion on like consistency and and these drugstore brands. So I thought about using the blue shimmer, but I think I'm gonna actually use this more like satin purple and then put this on top of it. Just to play around, mix up some textures. Another part of that actually is I've learned that oftentimes, I feel like I'm just bagging on, another thing that I've learned over the last few years, and this just feels like I'm digging at drugstore makeup a lot, and I promise it won't all be that, but I feel like sometimes drugstore makeup is cheaper, but you get less product as well. And so like Pat McGrath palettes, like these are really expensive, but when you break them down price per gram, they're not that outrageous, especially compared to brands like Natasha Denona and like other like Tarte or what Too Faced or whatever. Like you look at the price per gram of a lot of these palettes, and these have, you only get 10 shades, but you get a lot of product in those 10 shades. And that may or not be worth it for you, but it is always something to look out for. Like I know some people really like the About Face matte eye paints. I just did a video on them, reviewing them after trying them for a couple weeks, and they are cheaper. They're $16 instead of like the Haus Labs ones are 21, I think, or 24. I don't remember exactly, but you get a lot more product in the Haus Labs. So if you were paying per gram, you're paying less with the Haus Labs than you are with the About Face. And I see that a lot consistently across things. And I don't think having the most of a product is necessarily important. I mean, like makeup does expire. Some things you're never gonna go through all the way. Sometimes you might go through it, but you know, it might be bad by the time you do. So like, there's a pro-con list for everything. But that is something that I have learned in the last years and something to think about when you're buying products. I wasn't gonna use one of the satins because I will often use those as a one and done, but I feel like this will make a nice base to that other shadow. So the next lesson, and this is something I had to learn a lot over 2020 as I was first getting into makeup and following more things on Instagram and making friends on Instagram and YouTube and stuff, was that you don't always need the next thing. Enjoy what you have versus always searching for the next best thing. This is the way I try to approach my makeup. Like I'm a sucker for eyeshadow palettes, and if it's like a boring neutral palette that I have something almost identical to, I'm not gonna buy it generally. But I have learned that if part of the reason I have a lot of them is I've learned if it's like, I wanna do this look, and it took me 5 palettes to do it because I had to grab a bunch of different colors because I don't have a lot of singles and I just don't like grabbing singles as much. If I see a palette and it's a brand I like and it's a color and it inspires me and it's like those colors all together, then I'd rather have that than use 5 palettes to do the same thing. So I guess this is a sidetrack thing I've learned. So if it comes to that, I would rather just have the additional palette than have to pull out a bunch and fit them all over the counter to try and like do a look. That I find frustrating. But especially with like base products, I feel like we're always launching new foundations and I see people buying foundation after foundation. And I have about 4 foundations and 2 skin tints, like tinted moisturizers. I have the Fenty and the Nars, and then I have 4 foundations. One of which I got from Kosas, so that helps. But I see, and I tried the Mario foundation, I got a sample from it, and I think more people should get a sample of things because like for me, I've been on the hunt for the perfect foundation, like shade match wise and formula wise. So I understand trying them a lot to do that. And I feel like if you're in that mindset, you also approach them differently. You're not, 1, you shouldn't buy a full size for that, but 2, for these flaky shadows, I find it best to just kind of tap lightly to get some of the sparkle to adhere without fallout. But if you have foundations that you like, you don't necessarily, buy what you want to buy. That's fine. But you don't need the new one just because it's new if you have ones that you like. So for me, figuring out that I was an olive undertone and not like neutrally golden, was a process, and then finding the right foundation shade. And so like, I'm gonna use the Pat McGrath foundation today, and I really do like the formula, but the tone is not right. It's like, it's olive, but it's like neutral olive. So it's not quite olive enough for a perfect match. I would say the Haus Labs and the Eldridge are the best matches that I've found. Kind of like the Nars, it's olive, but it's also a little too golden. So like it can work, but it's not exact. So there's a lot of trial and error that way for me. But in general, I see new bronzers released all the time, new concealers constantly launched. And I see people who have 20, 30 concealers in their collection, especially YouTube people. And that's, if you want that, that's fine. If you like trying those things, that's fine. But you don't need that. And especially people who don't have a YouTube channel or don't have a TikTok where they're doing makeup, they don't have a reason to buy as many. It's good to remember, like, I have one I like. I don't need to buy this just because it's new. And that's something that I think we all need to tell ourselves and each other a little bit more often. Just because it's new and shiny doesn't mean we need to have it. Okay, so I'm gonna start on my base now, and then I'll finish the eyes afterwards. So I'm just putting a little bit of the Milk Primer on my nose and forehead, where I get a little shiny. And of course it's gonna make me more red. I feel like my skin's doing mostly okay today. I did buy a new razor type that's made for sensitive skin, and I'm having a lot less issues thanks to that. But yeah, especially with like liquid products, like you're not gonna go, like a foundation, you're not gonna go through it that fast, and they do go bad. So it seems silly to have a ton of them. Obviously, no judgment if you have a lot and you like them, that's up to you. But for me, it feels unnecessary. And like you'll see, I use basically the same couple bronzers in every video. Most of the Haus Labs, sometimes the Trixie or the Melt, because those are the three I have. You'll see I use the same few blushes over and over again, the same few highlighters, because unless I'm doing a fun, colorful highlighter from Kaleidos, I have like 3 that I rotate through. So like, that's just my perspective and something I've learned over the last few years. Okay, and then the next one, and this is something I'm seeing some of my friends start to learn as well, is you can appreciate something but not buy it. So I see things all the time, and I have for years, like since I started this, especially once I set up a set budget for myself every month for makeup and YouTube and stuff. There's a lot of things that I would be like, okay, I see this, it's pretty, I would like to own this. Like, I would be really happy if I owned this. But my hand was kind of forced because I had, a set budget. But it was also like, this would be lovely to have. I would happily use this palette or use whatever, but I don't need it. And I'm perfectly happy getting by without it. So you can appreciate things from afar. You can support a brand by saying, like, commenting on sharing the product and saying like how pretty this is without actually having to spend your money on it. Brands are not our friends. Even influencers are not our friends. We can appreciate something without having to actually spend money on it and buy it. Like Odin's Eye just did their new collab with Batty Bean and Makeup Just for Fun and Lauren May Beauty, and they were pretty. I really liked Lauren's and Makeup Just for Fun, Amanda's. I really liked them. I know Amanda somewhat. We talk periodically. We follow each other on Instagram and we talk, we check in with each other and talk. And I told her, like, I was really happy for her, congratulations, but I didn't buy it because it wasn't in my budget and it wasn't something I needed. So I could like congratulate her, I could talk to people about how pretty it was and how good of a job they all did, but I didn't have to buy the product myself. And I think that's something that we all need to get better at. I think we all get lost in the hype sometimes and we're like, that's pretty, so I have to have it. And it's like, no, it's pretty, but do you need it? Probably not. Matching a foundation is always kind of weird because my forehead is the most consistent color, and then my face is like multiple colors, and then my beard hair makes it look cooler and like, you know, also like off color-wise, paler because of my beard hair. And then like I'm really pale right here, but then I'm like not pale the rest of my body. So like if I was wearing a tank top, it would be like pale, even with the tank top, it'd be pale here, but then dark right here. But this, I do light layers, and I think it looks nice when I do wear this one. It's just not my absolute favorite color. Okay, and then the next one is something that, this is something I've always known, but it's kind of been reinforced for the last few years, is that, what was that? Like a really loud plane or something just went overhead. Is that FOMO doesn't matter. So I've never been one to suffer from FOMO in general. Like, I've said this before, I don't know if it's the autism or not, but like even as a child, it didn't, like, my friends doing something didn't really like motivate me to do something. Like people would be like, oh, don't you want this toy? All of your friends are buying it. And it was like, well, no, not really. Like, it's not my kind of toy or my kind of TV show or my kind of song or album. And they'd be like, but all your friends are listening to it or playing it or doing this. And it was like, yeah, and that's good for them, but I don't, that's not me. I don't need it. And that confused a lot of adults in my life. I was also a very weird kid and would like interview adults and be like, so why do you like this? What about this speaks to you? But FOMO, like, I do get a little bit of FOMO for seeing people, like finding out, like one of our friends might be like, hey, come to the bar. And I'll be like, I'm too tired. I don't feel like it. And then I don't go. And then I see pictures afterwards and everybody's like having fun and there's other people that showed up. And I'm like, oh, it would have been nice to see them. I miss them. I get that kind of FOMO, or like, especially now being in Seattle and missing our friends in New York, like I'll see people posting that they're doing stuff together, and there's like some FOMO there of like, I miss these people and I wish I was there doing this stuff with them. But that's about it. As far as like products and other stuff, FOMO is something that's never really affected me. And I think it's something that more people like need to try to work past, because I see a lot of people buy things just because of FOMO. They see everybody else doing it, and even if they didn't want it, just because they're seeing everybody else use it or talk about it or whatever, they're like, well, now I want to know what it's like, and they'll buy it as well. And that's just like a habit we need to break ourselves of. We should buy things because we want them and because they bring joy to us and they bring something to us, not just because other people are using it. And that's a hard lesson to learn, but it is something I think we all need to work on. So I'm just setting my concealer with a little bit of the Pat under eye powder. I have the light one. My husband also uses this, so it gets worn down pretty quickly. But I like it for him because he's a redhead. He is he has, no melanin at all. And then, so it works well for his skin tone. And then for me, it helps brighten my under eyes nicely. So I do like this powder. I don't have the big Pat McGrath setting powder or anything, just that one. So the rest of my face, I will be setting with the Haus Labs. Okay, so now that my under eyes are done, and I'm going to just finish off my eyes, and I'm just using the same taupey colors and going underneath to kind of tie everything together. So the next thing is something I've learned over the last few years is I would rather wait and have one nice thing than multiple dupes or cheap options. So this is something I also experience in my everyday life outside of makeup. I would generally like to buy like save up and just wait a little bit longer and buy the thing that I really want than buy the cheaper version of it. So sometimes you have no choice. You really need a new pair of pants because you ripped yours or they're ruined or something, like that's different. But if it's something that you can hold off on and there's not an urgency to it, I would rather wait and get the thing that I really want the first time than buy cheaper alternatives over and over again. It's something I've had to learn my whole life because I grew up really, really, really poor. Like, you know, food bank poor. Only meal I really ate was my free lunch at school some days, poor. Slept on people's couches for a while, poor. So I have had to, like, as an adult, being an academic, I haven't earned a lot of money, but like I've had to learn my relationship with money. And that's one of those things that I see a lot of people I grew up with would be like, buy the cheap thing, it would wear out, buy the next cheap thing, it would wear out, buy the next cheap thing. And you'd end up spending, like, let's say you buy a $10 thing, a $10 thing, a $10 thing, a $10 thing. And then, or you could have spent $30 up front and bought something that would have lasted that whole time. You save money that way and you get the thing that you really wanted. So when possible, that is something that I try to always do when purchasing things in general, not just makeup. And it's definitely helped a lot over the years. But also, like, when I'm looking at makeup, I would rather have one Pat McGrath palette or one Viseart palette or one Natasha Denona palette than like 3 ColourPop palettes. It's just like, it would just makes me happier to have one nice high quality thing than to have a bunch of cheaper versions of things. So that is definitely something that I've had to work on as I learned the makeup things I like, what I value in makeup, the products and formulas I like. That is something that I have taken from the way I view buying things in the real, outside of that. I mean, this is the real world, but buying things outside of makeup and beauty and moving it into beauty as well. So this is something that I will talk about in my red flags of makeup reviews that I'm going to be filming soon. Because I just did makeup red flags for like products and stuff in general, makeup in general, and I'm gonna do reviews soon. But something that I have learned is personal taste isn't the same thing as quality. So when I first started watching more makeup YouTube and reviews, trying to find products that I would like, a lot of people would be like, well, this looks awful on my skin, it's terrible, why no one ever should buy this, don't buy this. And I started to learn that a lot of that was more their personal taste. Like, I would see people like buy a palette and they're like, these shimmers are awful, no one should buy this, this is terrible, I can't believe they would release this palette. And then I would sometimes get that palette and be like, I love this, this is great. And it was just, they don't like that type of shimmer. So, you know, that isn't for them, but there's a very big difference between quality and personal taste. And I think the two get conflated too much. So learning to differentiate and understand the difference between them, especially as a consumer, when looking at reviews, is something that is difficult to do and something that I've definitely had to learn over the last few years. Especially as I got more into makeup content, started making makeup content myself, that is something that I definitely had to learn. So as I review makeup, that is something that I've had to, like, the language that I use is very important and really matters. And so I pay very close attention to that. So sometimes I speak slower because I'm trying to be very intentional in how I talk. And I think, yeah, that's something that I've definitely had to learn over the last few years. Okay, so I'm almost done with my makeup now. I've gone very slow. Just throwing a little bit of blush on, and then I might just leave it with the lip oil. I do have some Pat McGrath lip glosses and lipsticks, but I'm thinking I'm just gonna leave it with the lip oil. So the next thing is, Instagram makeup and real life makeup are very different. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some very Instagram-y makeup looks that I like to do, and I will wear those out into the real world, but makeup for real life is not the same as makeup for cameras. And that is something that as I started taking photographs of my makeup, I started to learn, where it would be like, I would do a makeup look in the bathroom and I would be like, wow, this looks really cute. And then I'd go to take a picture and it doesn't translate as well because it wasn't big enough or bold enough, or falsies really make it look more like you have lashes, and like real lashes kind of get hidden in photos. And filming kind of like, even though I film with natural light, because my windows are bluish and there's a lot of them, I get washed out, so I have to color correct a little bit. But little things like makeup in real life is not exactly the same as the makeup we're seeing on Instagram. And I think too many people, I've seen people try to emulate Instagram makeup, and especially younger people I've seen try to mimic Instagram or very drag inspired makeup, which good for you if that's what you want to do. But I've seen some where it was like, you followed a makeup tutorial and you went really heavy and it looks heavy on your face. Like you have like a pound of makeup on your face, and like it might, and it's just like, it doesn't look good in person most of the time. And I saw someone on TikTok recently who was talking, I think it was TikTok or YouTube, but they were saying like, it's really interesting. Like they do their makeup for real life, and they went to like a brand event that had a lot of influencers, and they were like, the influencers looked kind of weird in person, but you could tell that they did their makeup for camera and for photos, and in all of the photos they looked better than this person. And it was like, yeah, because camera makeup and in-person makeup are two very different things. And unless you go into makeup unless you're like doing makeup and putting pictures online and like experiencing that, it's not something you might necessarily know right off the bat. Okay, so I'm gonna go throw some mascara on and I will be right back. Okay, so I went ahead and I added some more of my Haus Labs lip oil, love this, and I put on my Pat McGrath mascara. And that made me think of another thing that I've learned over the last few years, is that I prefer mini trial size mascaras. It takes you about as long to go through one of these as you should, because you're supposed to replace your mascara like every 3 or 4 months. So this is, you know, will last about that time. It makes traveling easier. And I've also learned that I like mascara best when it's been open for a little while and it's starting to dry out. I feel like it just works better than a fresh tube. But I definitely like mini mascaras the most, and that's because then you're not keeping something past when you really should, or you're not wasting product. It's just, it works better in my opinion. Okay. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention, and this is more about going forward on my channel and in my relationship with makeup, and I've said this before on my channel this year, is I've tried a lot of formulas. I've learned what I like, what I don't like. I've learned like the type of mattes, the type of shimmers, the brands that I like and the brands that I don't like. I've learned a lot, and I do want to keep trying new brands and trying new formulas. The scientist in me loves trying new things and comparing. I mean, my research is mostly in comparative anatomy, so it makes sense. I like comparing things. But I have learned, I've spent the last 3 years learning what I like, and I feel like now I have a big stockpile of stuff. And so a lot of what you're gonna see on the channel this year is like refining what I have, doing like the revisiting series that I just finished the first one of, and that should be going up before this. I'm gonna be doing that revisiting series. I'm gonna be doing some other stuff, and I wanna like use more of what I own on camera and work on my relationship with what I have, because I feel like there's so many things that I own that I don't use as much as I would like, and really refine my collection down to the perfect collection for me. So that is something that I am working on, and that ties into the you don't need everything. You don't need to try everything. There are definitely brands that I would like to try. I'd like to try Ace Beauté. I would like to try Glamlight. I've heard good things about both. But I'm not gonna buy something just to try them unless it really speaks to me and it really fills a gap in my collection. And I feel like that's a lot of where my makeup started as I started really expanding, was filling in gaps. And then I started filling in too many gaps and gaps that didn't exist. And so now it's still about refining and filling in those gaps, and you don't have to try everything. There's too many brands and too many products out there. There's no way, unless you're someone whose full-time job is buying and reviewing makeup, like Angelica Nyquist or someone, or Manny MUA or something, unless your full-time job is buying and reviewing makeup, there's no way to try it all. So you shouldn't put that pressure on yourself that you need to try it all. Okay, so makeup is done, my notes are done. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this video. I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. If you have a YouTube channel, I'd love to see other people do this. I think this is, like I said, I think this is an important topic to talk about, and something we should do on YouTube, especially as we're seeing this rise of like drama and issues and other stuff on TikTok. And we're seeing you see people on YouTube talking about TikTok is reliving the issues YouTube had 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And so I think it would be helpful to have content out there to talk about these kind of things, the lessons people have learned as far as owning a channel, about using makeup, buying makeup, consuming makeup, to have that out there. So I think that's just important. So like I said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.